There's a new Star Wars show out right now called The Acolyte. Maybe you've heard of it. God help you if you have. And in an ideal world, this would be a time for celebration, speculation, and reflection. But sadly, this world sucks, and so does the Star Wars fandom, and so does Star Wars most of the time. As the current punching bag of the internet, The Acolyte is being ripped to shreds no matter which way you look. Everyone and their mother has an opinion on it, mine included. She likes it, by the way. Even people who haven't watched any of it have a lot to say about it. We've reached a point as consumers of media that we often don't even watch shows anymore, we just watch our favorite YouTuber talk about them, and sometimes they don't even watch them. But if you actually did watch the show and you still don't like it, same. The absolute nothing burger that was episode 4, simply titled Day, was followed by episode 5, simply titled Night, very creative, and this was easily the least worst episode yet, primarily because it was mostly people fighting and main characters dying. Oh, whoops, I forgot to issue a spoiler warning, but let's be real, you've either seen this already or you hate the show and shouldn't care. I mean, I saw it and I still didn't care. Anyways, even though I don't like the show thus far, I'm gonna do something that many people who hate the show aren't doing. Be charitable. And in order to do that, I'm going to exercise a skill that I fear more and more people simply do not have the longer I scroll through Twitter. Critical thinking. Not drinking, thinking. If you enjoy criticizing media as much as I do, it's easy to have a field day with The Acolyte. I can't wait to make a big video after the finale going over all the problems I have with the show, which you should stick around for, if only there were a button or an icon for that. There is so much to criticize here, but it takes critical thought to produce a critical analysis, so why even bother, I guess? At least that's how it feels to hear or read the complaints of people who decided this show's existence alone breaks canon the moment they saw a red lightsaber in the first official trailer. What should have been a question to ask oneself, reflect on, and then answer in silence was echoed across comment sections. The Jedi aren't supposed to know about the Sith yet. Why is there a guy with a red lightsaber fighting Jedi? Was a question that could have been answered with a simple, I don't know. The show isn't out yet. Since the show's release, and now even more so since the 5th episode came out, this back and forth has transitioned into, the Jedi aren't supposed to know about the Sith yet. Why did this guy kill a bunch of Jedi and tell one of them that he's a Sith? And if we're thinking critically, which I barely even am right now, the simple answer to that is, I don't know. The show is not over yet. Most of these breaking canon complaints start with episode 3, which I've already talked about in my last video, so go watch that if you like. But to quickly recap, episode 3, cringy musical number aside, is really bad because it's an incomplete story. By having most of the episode be from Osha's perspective, we witness everything from a certain point of view. The ending feels stupid and full of holes because it is. They're gonna fill them in soon, you just have to keep watching, but I know that's a lot to ask of some people. The same goes for the Immaculate Conception of the twins. Making jokes about lesbians scissoring each other through the Force to create life might be the funniest shit in the world if you're 14, but that's not what happened. You don't even have to put on the critical thinking cap for this one, you just have to watch the episode without falling asleep. Impossible, I know. And you'd recognize that we don't know how they were created. It's left intentionally vague. Does it have something to do with the knowledge or the power that Plagueis used to create life? Probably, but since the show is not over yet, that's just a theory. And I'm not sure if you know this or not, but coming up with those is like kind of a big part of being a fan of something. Like imagine if you were a Star Wars fan and you had the word theory in your name and you took everything at face value just so you could call it stupid and dumb instead of, I don't know, coming up with a theory. I've always hated when people tell someone to stop complaining about something by saying it's a sci-fi series for kids, just turn your brain off. But now it feels like more and more people are turning their brain off so they can complain about something. If there's one complaint people have that I think is so stupid it actually pains me to have to talk about it, it's Ki-Adi-Mundi. A guy famous for being the first on-screen death in Order 66, and for having a malformed shaped head. Despite being a tier 3 glup shitto, Ki-Adi-Mundi's inclusion in the Acolyte can hardly be called fan service, and not because it's making some of them upset. I wasn't even sure if this was actually him until I saw his name in the credits. This cameo is not for fan service. But if it's not for fan service, then why include him in this show at all? Well, some people have a theory. Unfortunately, however, it's not a theory related to the story or characters, it's about the people who made the show, which isn't really what I meant when I said you're supposed to theorize, but whatever. It doesn't even matter if he thought they were Sith or Rogue Jedi. The point is, everyone involved in this show knew the weight of Ki-Adi-Mundi's iconic line in the prequels.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
Yet they still decided to bring him into the mix. They knew it would be controversial and did it anyway, fully aware it would rile up fans. First of all, that's hilarious. Second of all, that's not an iconic line. I am your father, may the Force be with you. I have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire. Those are iconic lines. Ki-Adi-Mundi's dismissal of Qui-Gon's theory about the Sith returning is not an iconic line, we just know that because we're nerds. And third, again, no, just no. Yes, there is some dumbass shit in Star Wars. At first time viewing, yes, dumb things have been done as a result of dumb decisions made by creatives in charge of past projects. But it's another thing entirely to believe everyone gathered around Dave Filoni and asked him, who could we put in this show to piss off fans? Did I mention that our goal is to make the fans mad? This is how production works. You're a fan? Fuck you. This is an example of someone not thinking critically. In order to get to the bottom of why he was included in this show, I'm gonna use Occam's razor. And just to make sure we all know what that means, I'm gonna consult Dave Rubin.
John, let me give you another razor, Occam's razor. If something can go wrong, it will.
Nope. That's not it. In the most reductive of terms, Occam's razor is the principle that the simplest explanation is more than likely the correct one. And in the case of Master Egghead Gunner over here, it's definitely not what that random guy with the blue checkmark on Twitter said. Yeah, shocking, I know. I hate to sound condescending or smug, acting as if I know everything, because I don't. But there's really no way to sugarcoat this. If for whatever reason, you take Ki-Adi-Mundi's word about the Sith being extinct for a millennium as gospel, fact, or truth, you are a moron. The Phantom Menace just had its 25th anniversary last month, and I know damn well most of you guys were in that theater watching, so don't act like you just forgot. If what he said was true, then the prequel trilogy just doesn't fucking happen. He's wrong. He's wrong about, like, everything. He says the Sith have been extinct for a millennium, but he's wrong, Palpatines don't grow on trees. He says Count Dooku is a political idealist, not a murderer. But he's wrong, Count Dooku kills people all the time. He tells his men, come on, but he's wrong, their orders are not to come on and keep fighting, their orders are to gun him down like a dog in the street. You know what? Play it again. It's so satisfying to watch. Fuck that guy. I've never liked him. The simplest explanation for why they chose to put him in the Acolyte is because of that line. Not to undermine it, but to expand on it. This goes back to what I said in my last video. There is a difference between breaking the lore and expanding the lore. And as I said in that video, yes, it is possible to do both simultaneously, but once again, the show is not over. Just so I've covered all my bases, even though I believe this is the dumbest hill I've seen people willing to die on, Ki-Adi-Mundi's age.
Ki-Adi-Mundi's age came from movie information source Star Wars, Episode 1. This isn't an E-U-L-C canon source, but a G-canon source.
These are not G-canon sources. If it's not one of the movies or the Clone Wars, it's not G-canon. This is such a stupid hill to die on, and I'm sure George Lucas would agree. He made this shit up as he went along. An insider's guide, book, or trading card establishing something as fact was only a fact until George Lucas decided that it wasn't. I personally don't think it's worth jumping through all the hoops required to justify or defend changes George made, like with people's lightsaber colors. Because if we're really taking information found on trading cards as gospel, I don't even know how we're supposed to make sense of the Topps trading cards for The Empire Strikes Back that state Luke is 22 and Leia is 20. He may have had ideas for where he wanted to go, but we already know what some of those ideas were, and thank God he didn't go there. All that is to say, George Lucas made a lot of this stuff up as he went along, and people loved it. Then he did it again, and a lot of people hated it. Then the people who loved it grew up, and got to watch two other guys make it up as they went along, and a lot of them hated it too. Dave Filoni did not approve of the inclusion of Ki-Adi-Mundi in the Acolyte, thus establishing that he was much older than initially presumed in canon, just to personally spite you. Chances are he approved it because the people doing it had an idea and pitched it to him, and he thought it worked. In The Phantom Menace, Ki-Adi-Mundi says it's impossible for Qui-Gon to have encountered a Sith Lord because the Sith have been extinct for a millennium. We know just from watching the movie that he's wrong. The Sith have not been extinct for a millennium. So Ki-Adi-Mundi is either A, misinformed due to arrogance, ignorance, or both, or B, lying as in he knows they're not extinct and he's lying for reasons we don't yet know. If he and other Jedi did find out at some point, like in the show perhaps, maybe he'd help cover it up. But why would he do that? Well, I don't know. And I said maybe for the same reason that I don't know. The show is not over yet. If your only goal when discussing this show is to complain about something new each week, then I get how convenient it is for you to operate on the assumption that everyone involved in this show's production had the events of The Phantom Menace just wiped from their memory, instead of doing the more likely thing they probably did do, which was watch it repeatedly and take notes. As of right now, Ki-Adi-Mundi has every reason to believe that the Sith are extinct. This lines up with The Phantom Menace where we see that he still believes, although incorrectly, that the Sith are extinct. We don't know what information he learns, if any, between now and the movie. This is because, and I'm sorry for repeating myself, I know most of you understand this very simple fact, but some people are harder to reach than others. The show is not over yet. Following the end of episode 5, we are left with another issue that supposedly breaks canon, which is the fact that Khmer reveals to a Jedi that he is a Sith Lord. Except, no he didn't. You can accuse me of arguing semantics or giving the writers too much credit, but I did say at the beginning of this video that I'm gonna be charitable. Khmer does not say, I'm a Sith. Sol asks him, what are you? And he says, I have no name, but the Jedi like you might call me Sith. Maybe it's just me, and I'm perfectly fine with it being just me out alone on this one, but that is not confirmation of Khmer being a Sith Lord. I don't care that Manny Jacinto refers to him as one. Actors lie all the time. He even talked about all the lying he had to do leading up to this reveal. He's full of Sith. Shit. Bad day to be dyslexic. Being the charitable, charming champion of critical thought that I am, I'm instinctively drawn closer to the screen so I can get a good view of the subtitles, and so I can then pick apart the dialogue. It's not just the wording Khmer uses that raises my eyebrow, it's Sol's response to it. If we're not thinking critically, and just assuming that this is the same as Khmer saying, I am a Sith Lord, then Sol's response to this revelation is really fucking weird.
I have no name, but a Jedi like you might call me Sith. Why risk discovery?
That is not the response you'd expect from someone who we assume is meant to believe up until this point that the Sith have been extinct for the past 900 years. This reads like the response from someone who knows more about the Sith than they previously let on. Does it have something to do with the information that he learned, events he witnessed, or directly participated in 16 years ago on Brendok? Well, I don't know for sure because the show is not over yet. But if we take this line as Khmer calling out Sol for his personal bias as a Jedi to label anyone outside of his in-group as Sith, then this can mean a number of things. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where I believe you are meant to speculate. It's a little odd that a supposed Sith Lord doesn't have a name. Could he be part of a dark side splinter group? What if he's just acting alone? He clearly has knowledge of the witches and what happened to them, and I will repeat this until I'm shown otherwise. Sol and the Jedi killed them, so perhaps he was there. There are at least 2 mysterious hooded figures present at the ritual, and if the shorter one is that old lady, then could this be him? Could it be a Sith Master? Darth Tenebris? Darth Plagueis? I don't know, and at this point, you know why I don't know. The show is not over yet. If you're asking me, which you're not because this is pre-recorded, I would say that I'm not taking what he says at face value. I don't think that line is confirmation of him being a Sith Lord. Even though it sounds like Kylo Ren's theme plays during this scene, I'm not sure if I believe the idea that they're going to show us both the origins of the Knights of Ren and the slow return of the Sith. The way I interpreted this was that Khmer knows Sol, and more importantly, he knows what Sol thinks of people who aren't Jedi but can still wield the Force, especially ones who can and do wield it. And for the direction I think the story is taking, the issue is how people have wielded it. I have no evidence to back this up other than unused trailer footage and having a hunch, but I think that Jedi are going to accuse the witches of being Sith in the next flashback. This official still is one of many from Getty Images, and each were tagged according to which episode they were from. This tells us that we're revisiting the Coven in episode 7, and this is where I believe we will see what really happened that night. We know from interviews that we're not going to get answers to all of our questions, like how the twins were conceived. Different characters are going to assume different things, which I assume are the Jedi, which I believe is what motivates them to take action that night, killing everyone in the Coven and blowing up the reactor, then blaming all of it on a fire started by a girl who died in said fire. I'm saying all of this now because I know there will be loose ends that aren't tied up when the credits roll after the finale. There will be people insisting that this and that or the entire goddamn thing breaks the established continuity and ruins everything. Season 2 is not guaranteed, and keeping in mind that this show is pitched with a series Bible, it stands to reason that there will be more mysteries left to unravel. If this were any other show, the discussions that follow the end of the season would be what you'd expect. People speculating and theorizing about what we might possibly see in Season 2, but with the current state of discourse that we find ourselves in, we all know that's not going to happen. Anything that is not told to the audience by a character looking directly into the camera and reading a synopsis of the revelation is going to be thrown up as proof the Acolyte has completely and utterly shattered the canon. Ignoring the fact that this show is canon, whether or not you like it, and that means the stuff we witness in the show directly influences the Phantom Menace. When all is said and done and we finally know how the story ends, we can look at how it lines up with the films. Maybe the Jedi Council do end up learning about the Sith, and for reasons revealed in the show, they decide to cover it up. The knowledge of this cover-up gets passed down to each new master over the next 100 years, meaning that this scene in The Phantom Menace would no longer be just some typical stilted line delivery and acting from Sam Jackson and a Muppet, and is instead retroactively recontextualized to be Mace Windu looking at Yoda like, bro, everyone's about to find out.
I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing. Ah,
Yeah, I just went to 7-Eleven.
hard to see the dark side is.
That's pretty convenient.
This is, of course, just a theory, something I'm not sure I'm even qualified to come up with since I don't have that word in my name. We should also consider the possibility that everyone with knowledge of these events will die. Personally, I think it's a mix of both. With the way things left off in episode 5, I think Osha is being set up to kill Sol in a fit of rage and as an act of revenge when she learns what he did to her family. I have no idea what to make of May because if I'm being honest, her character and her motivations have made increasingly less sense as the story has progressed. And I think someone like Vernestra would do a cover-up. Trailer footage tells me that she's going to see what happened on Kofar, and since the show has already established that she wants to keep things real hush-hush, I would not be surprised if she initiates a cover-up. Also, it feels like I'm pointing out the obvious here, but it also feels like people are either choosing to ignore this or just so caught up in a cycle of rage that they simply forget this fact. But what little plot this show has is not being driven by an investigation into the Sith. It's an investigation into May. May is at the center of this investigation. When Vernestra shows up on Kofar and finds the bodies of all the Jedi, she's likely going to attribute them to the work of May, because she doesn't have the information that we do as the audience. The only one who has knowledge of May's master having any direct involvement is Sol. Of course, people want to know why Sol doesn't just radio Vernestra or the Council the second he boards his ship, but it's pretty obvious that he has a history with lying and covering things up. And seeing as Kamir hints at having direct knowledge of what Sol has covered up in the past, Sol might not want to tell the Council or Vernestra about any potential Sith involvement out of a desire for self-preservation. And sure, you can call that stupid or get frustrated by it, but that's a very common thing with prequels. People have knowledge that could change the course of history, but they don't disclose it because they can't, because it's a prequel. The one thing I don't expect to be addressed ever, and I don't have any evidence for this either, I just have a gut feeling, is the issue of the Jedi taking in Osha when she is far too old. Most complaints I've seen feel like they come from a place of belief held long before the show even started, that the people making it just don't know anything about Star Wars, but the Jedi taking in Osha, despite her age and attachments, is the one complaint I do think is valid, and I believe, with, again, no evidence to back up, that this part of the story was written without doing a quality and continuity review. It's the one thing I can see someone pointing out and being told, does it really matter? Who cares? Which honestly, I get it. I don't care either. Not about continuity, I mean, the show really, because I'm not being paid to say this, obviously. I don't feel like I'm even defending the show, I just think people are annoying, and this show, as bad as it is making them louder, which annoys me more. To cap this one off, I want to remind you all that Yoda knowing about the rule of 2 is kind of weird, and this show is probably going to explain how he knows that, and we can judge if it's a good thing or a bad thing when the show is over. And I want to read aloud an iconic tweet that I saw shared by and recaptioned by Nude Gunray on Twitter. A good 70% of Acolyte criticisms would not exist if people looked at this tweet and thought, wow, I'd be embarrassed if this happened to me. Lady behind me at the thing screening last night to her partner, why are they shooting at the dog? And her partner says very firmly, have you never seen a film before? You watch it and information is revealed.